Okay, welcome back to the Azure Education video series. This is video number 6, focusing on Azure pricing and cost management. My name is David Ulloa, Azure TSP. I'm joined by Amy Manley and Eric DeBoard. They're also Azure TSPs at Microsoft, and we focus in education. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's do a quick review. In our previous video, video number 5 in the series, Contoso has defined their subscriptions and they started to plan solutions in Azure. But first, they want to get cost estimates for initial workloads and a way to track them and optimize spend over time. So in this video, we will cover tools available in Azure to help Contoso generating estimates and also monitor spend over time and optimize costs like infrastructure, licensing, etc.
And I think a good point to make here, David, is that a number of our customers don't take the time to really kind of pre-estimate what their workloads are. So we're hoping through this video that we can show that that's the appropriate method and also how to do it.
Exactly, Eric. Yeah, we don't want customers to go ahead and just start deploying resources and then get surprised by the actual cost. So generating estimates, it's something that's top of mind. So let's review real quick how, kind of like Contoso Education business requirements, what they want to deploy in Azure. And, so here we see that Contoso Education needs to extend their on-premises data center to Azure. Reviewing their business requirements, one of the main things they wanted to do is to provide high availability to their mission critical systems by replicating them to Azure. And one of the things we wanted to point out is there's a separate video series focusing specifically on Azure site recovery, Azure service for high availability. So definitely check out this link right here, and we'll make sure we put that in the video series notes.
And I'll just mention something about that, David. That video series is about, a year and a half, 2 years old. However, most of the concepts are absolutely current, especially if you just want to learn about Azure Site Recovery. The very first video is a great introduction to what the tool can do for you.
Yeah, excellent. Now, another kind of like solution or workload that Contoso Education is looking to do is they want to place Windows domain controllers in Azure. So we'll go through the Azure pricing calculator to estimate how much that would cost. Again, they're also looking to send backups offsite for long-term retention. So they're currently using tapes and they want to move away from that and just leverage the cloud. And then they're also looking to migrate some Windows Server 2008 systems. Azure actually has a 3-year extended support offer for Windows Server 2008 systems. So we'll estimate some VMs as well.
Yeah, and I think the point to also make about that last bullet there is that Azure Site Recovery is a disaster recovery tool, but it could also be the tool used to migrate workloads to Azure.
Yeah, great point, Eric. So one of the challenges that the customers have is trying to make sense of all the tools to not only generate estimates but then understand their spend in Azure. So we're going to go spend a few minutes talking about the tools: Azure Pricing Calculator, what's available in the Enterprise Admin Portal for education customers, some other tools within the Azure portal like Azure Advisor, and then finish up with showing you what's available in the Azure Cost Management. So we're going to go ahead and go through some of the demos here. All right, so right here we're actually logged. If customers just do a search for Azure Pricing Calculator, you can go ahead and just in your favorite browser, just type Azure Pricing Calculator. You'll see that it'll be the first option. You'll see. Right, Pricing Calculator, right there. So one of the things that what the Azure Pricing Calculator is, again, it's a web-based tool. Lets you select services. So you notice here, different services focused on compute, networking, storage, all available. These are the common featured ones right here. It's going to let you select the service and actually view the output of the cost that'll run in Azure. You see at the top your 3 tabs, one for products, one for estimates. So you actually have the option to save estimates. So one of the things that's always recommended, you notice here in the top right hand corner, I'm already logged in, so I have the option to save these estimates. So definitely, if you have an account, just click on the login and you'll be able to do that. And then you also have a tab for frequently asked questions. So if you want to know more information about how do you save your estimate, how to share your estimates, how to view different SKUs, for example, you can go in here into the FAQ section. So let's go ahead and price out something. So I'm going to click here under the featured, do virtual machine. You'll see that that's added to your estimate below. And one of the things that you'll start to notice is the first thing is under virtual machines, you get to pick different regions. So this is one of the options that you need to decide right away is where's that workload going to run. So if it needs to run close proximity to your data center, then you want to pick a region that's close to you. So I'm going to pick East US. If you ever have a question as to what is the closest region to your particular data center, from within your network, you can always search for azurespeed.com, and you'll get to see different data centers around the world, and you can select ones that you think are in close proximity to your location. So here I just picked the first three here: West US, East US, and East US 2. And based on latency, you'll get to see which is the closest data centers. So for me, I'm based here in Miami. You notice that East US and East US 2 are in close proximity here. So let me go back over here. So I'm going to pick East US. Next step I'm going to pick is the operating system. Right here, Windows, standard tier, and the instance of the VM. Now, a couple of notes on instances. You'll get to see there's a lot of instance options here. Most of our customers, they typically pick what we call a general purpose VM, which is in the D series. Right here, this is an example. Now, if you want more information about details of different VM instances, you can always click on pricing details right here. It'll open up another tab, and you get to see right here all the different VM sizes. So if you wanted to maybe, for example, price out one that's compute optimized, you can do that. General purpose that we're talking about, these are the D series VMs, and even memory optimized, those VMs that have a high memory to core ratio. All right, so I'm going to pick a D2V2, for example. One of the things to always keep in mind is, whenever generating estimate, you can pick what we call hybrid benefit, which is the ability to bring your existing Windows Server licenses with software assurance and extend that to Azure. So right away you can save 40%. So if you notice for this example, I picked 2 core, 7 gigs of RAM. It went from $204 a month down to $112 for a VM running the whole entire month. Another option you'll see here is what we call reserve instance pricing. So you can, based on the VM series that you pick, you can select reservation, and this will give you the option to charge this VM up front, but then in turn will give you an additional discount. So if you notice here, this is a really nice option for VMs that are going to be running steady state for, let's say, an entire year, like the domain controllers as an example. So by choosing that option, you get to see an additional savings. So this brings down the price to $59.41. And down below, you have options for what we call the managed disk OS. So if you're running production workloads, you can choose premium SSD. But again, dev test, or you can choose standard HDD, right, depending on your workloads. So here's an example. If we were to pick a 128 gig VM disk right here, they'll add another $19.71. All right, so that's, again, one of the couple tips. One is you can always give your estimate a name. So you can give estimate, for VM as an example, give that a name, meaningful name. You can, down below, you have the option to export the estimate. You can share the estimate by copying this URL, sending it to maybe someone in your institution. You can save the estimate. you do that, you see that it saves it. And then right here, if we go back to estimates, you'll get to see some other estimates that have been saved already. So I'm going to go ahead and pick domain controllers. So this is, based on the business requirements for Contoso EDU. These are some of the work, some of the VMs and prerequisite resources. So here you notice here we chose a D2S virtual machine. That's 2 cores, 8 gigs of RAM. We chose 1 year reservation, 2 virtual machines with a premium SSD. So that's the total for 2 VMs. We also chose a VPN gateway. So one of the requirements is we want to extend our on-premises data center into Azure. So we need to do a site-to-site VPN tunnel. So again, chose the region, chose a VPN gateway. You have different tiers of VPN. For production purposes, it's always recommended to choose VPN Gateway 1. You also have higher availability options with a new capability of what we call availability zones. So that's an option there. For 730 hours, this is the estimate. We also have, there's also a couple of things to note is inbound data into Azure is no cost, but outbound data transfer, there's a cost here. So go ahead and enter some amount of data transfer that's for your estimate. And one thing to note is that we have what's called data egress waiver for education customers. So as long as data egress, this amount makes up 50% or less of your Azure monthly spend, this is actually going to see a credit for this in your Azure bill. A couple of other things we added here to the estimate is Azure backup. You'll see, every VM that's in Azure, we want to make sure that it's backed up. Some customers don't realize that, they need to add that. So we added 2 VMs, 128 gigs, keeping that backups for, daily retentions. So 30 dailies, 1 monthly. After 1 year, we see that estimate for noted down below.
And so one thing I will mention about this estimate, and the reason that we chose it for this series, is because this is one of the most common first workloads that our customers put out into Azure is domain controllers, just to set up their infrastructure for migrating workloads. So I just wanted to mention that quickly.
Exactly. This is kind of like the foundational workload, right? A couple of things that you want to do with domain controller in Azure is, talk about other requirements, other solutions that we're looking at, like site recovery. Right? If you're going to replicate these VMs to Azure, you want to have a domain controller in Azure. So you want to create an AD site and then have your domains replicate over that VPN tunnel. A couple of other services that we added to the estimate for folks that may not realize, we added update management, which is a service that will do a free assessment and patching of your Windows VMs. Put 2 notes. It's no cost. That's included with your Azure subscription. And then cost management, which will let you provide insights into your Azure spend and give you optimizations. And that's also free to monitor spend in Azure. And we'll go more into details in that one. Okay, a couple of other estimates, again, as part of Contoso EDU requirements. They wanted to do backups from offsite. So I'm going to open that estimate. Just quickly show everyone that estimate. They have, let's say they have 50 servers, each one at 140 gigs. They want to keep some dailies, some weeklies, some monthlies. That generates an estimate after a year down below right here. So you can build out that estimate. We also have an estimate for site recovery. So one of the requirements for Contoso Education is they have some VMs that they wanted to replicate, some mission critical virtual machines replicate to Azure and fail over to Azure. So this is another estimate as an example. You're going to choose site recovery as that service. 20 instances, charge the $25 a VM. So that's your estimate to replicate those VMs. And then steady state, we're going to be using some storage. So those VMs are going to replicate to Azure storage. So we're going to go ahead and add 20 disks, 128 gigs, give you a monthly estimate right here. This is using page blobs. And one of the, couple of things to note here is, again, we're using premium SSD, but be aware that, again, if you have dev test environments or non-production, you can certainly choose a different tier storage as well. And then once you actually fail over to Azure, again, this is using pay-as-you-go model, so you're not going to pay for compute until you do a test DR drill or you actually fail over to Azure. So we're going to estimate that here. So we're going to be adding virtual machines just like we did before. Choose a VM size. We're not going to use reservation because we're only going to be using those VMs for X number of hours. So again, those 20 VMs. And we're going to estimate 20 hours a month. So that VM is going to, we're going to do DR drill. So we're going to spin up those VMs and compute test, make sure everything's working fine. Or if you actually have a planned or unplanned outage, then you're going to run those in Azure. Your on-premises data center is back online. We're going to fail back to on-premises. So you notice how inexpensive this is for 20 virtual machines, about $38.40. Again, this will differ depending on your workload. We just chose a kind of like a general purpose virtual machine, but you can definitely choose different VM sizes depending on your needs. And then there is going to be some cost for your managed disks based on number of hours. So just doing the math here, there'll be a small cost for the time that VM will be running. All right, so this is an estimate. Let's say Contextual Education starts to deploy this in Azure. We got workloads running. The next step is, what can we use to monitor our spend? So there was an initial commitment in Azure. Remember from the first video, there was a $25,000 commit. You start provisioning resources. How do we manage? How do we monitor the spend and the utilization? So right here, a couple of tools that we're going to go over. One is the EA Enterprise Admin Portal. So ea.azure.com. You log in and go to the report section. So this is for enterprise administrators. They can see the summary of their usage, the monetary commit, and how much is consumed. You notice here you'll be able to track this over time, how much usage they've used here. On the right hand side, you'll see your beginning balance, your ending balance, your commitment usage. If there's any Azure Marketplace items that you've deployed from Azure, the Azure Marketplace, you'll get to see that as well. Down below, you'll get to get more granular by selecting your departments or specific subscriptions. So you notice here, you get to see how much of the spend by Azure service, how much of the is by marketplace, and if you want to go drill down to a particular subscription, you can do that and then get to see more details about that particular subscription. Now, you can also download the usage. So if you want more details from the EA portal, you can click over to download usage and be able to download the balance and charge details in a CSV. Same thing for usage detail, you can do that, and the marketplace charges as well.
And just a quick warning about those downloads, David. They contain a lot of line items.
Yep. Yeah, and that's one of the things that you'll start to see more and more of this level of detail be pulled into a different service like Azure Cost Management, which will give you the same level of insights without you having to download these files and then you having to comb through maybe thousands of lines, right, to get the information. But again, you still have the flexibility to download in case you need to. Okay, you can do advanced reports by selecting time range, specific accounts, and then this is also important. You have access to all this data via APIs. So you can generate an API access key and then access this information via an API. And this is how cost management will do it, and we'll walk through that in the next section here. Just a couple of notes. You have a price sheet. Again, this is the price list that's available for your enrollment. You can get to see if, for me, I don't see that information, but you certainly have the access. And then additional information on how you can tie in Power BI if you wanted to do your own reports as well. So real quick, just wanted to show you what's available in the Enterprise Admin Portal for enterprise administrators and billing contacts. Now we also have within the Azure portal, so log into portal.azure.com, we also have the service called Azure Advisor. This is a free service, so I'm going to go here on the left nav, click Advisor. And this is a free service that provides recommendations around high availability, security, performance. This is a free service. And you'll notice here on the right-hand side, there's recommendation on cost. So you'll notice here there's two recommendations that's impacting 3 resources, and you can click on that and get more details. You'll notice these recommendations are monitoring your subscriptions, and you can pick all the subscriptions that you have access to. You can download that recommendation as a CSV or as a PDF if you wanted to share amongst your team members or your managers. You can do that. And if you notice right here, this high recommendation, it's telling you that you can right size or shut down an underutilized virtual machine. So you can click on that, get more details. You actually will get to see the recommendation. So let me go back over here, see if we can show more details. You'll see here they'll give you the name of the virtual machine. They'll give you the recommendation rule. It's actually telling you that the average CPU for this VM is under 5%. So you can actually resize the VM and save on cost. So this analysis has been done for you. So you notice here, by resizing this VM, there's a potential annual savings right there of $13,000 right here. And you'll see these links. You can click on them. It'll take you directly to that virtual machine, and you can go ahead and change the size based on the recommendation. There's going to be other recommendations available. Again, this demo environment only shows right sizing. You'll also get to see recommendations on making reserve instances like you saw in the Azure pricing calculator. So if you see that recommendation, just be aware that you can actually also get details on making reserve instances.
And I'll just make a comment about this, David, and I'm sure this is true of you and Amy as well. But often when I'm with a customer and we're going through their portal and they click on the advisor, almost every time, I can't think of an example of a time when I've been with a customer that when they click on that advisor and look at the cost, they don't have recommendations.
Exactly.
Always there. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something definitely I would recommend customers to go and check every few days, because again, the rule sets are changing. It's going to be observing your environment as you deploy resources, and it's doing that work for you of seeing, okay, this is where you could right size, this is where you could save on cost. Again, as you save on cost, one of the other things you could do is explore how you can, let's say you're not backing up your VM. Well, there's some cost savings by right sizing your VM, and then be able to back up. For example, if in another recommendation is telling you that you're not protecting your VM. So definitely something to always check here. All right, the next service that we want to quickly go through is Azure Cost Management. And Cost Management is another free service. It provides a consolidated view of all your Azure consumption, your cost over time, and track all that cost against, let's say, your budget, right? And produce the reports like chargeback and showback. So to do that, you go here under Cost Management and Billing. So we were in Advisor. Go ahead and find the icon that looks like a coin for Cost Management and Billing. And then you'll see your subscription. Now, if you go over here under Cost Management, again, one of the things is the Cost Management, or also known as Cloudin, is in the process of being integrated into the Azure portal. So if you click on these options, which is open cost analysis, create a budget, view recommendations, you notice view recommendations sends you to the Azure Advisor, but these tools, these options may be already enabled for you. But then you get access to all the reports and if you click here where it says go to Cloudin. So if you click on go to Cloudin, first thing you're going to get is you're going to get an option to register. And you're going to go through this registration step, and one of those steps is going to be entering your API key that you saw in your Enterprise Admin portal. So definitely recommend an Enterprise Administrator go through this step, because they'll have access to that API access key that we saw in the previous portal.
And this only has to be done once, correct?
This only needs to be done once. Recommended that the Enterprise Administrator do this, since they have access to the API access key. And then that Enterprise Administrator will grant access to other folks in the institution, right, to see their spend
And
So
then how long before you start seeing data in Cloudin, usually?
yeah, great question, Amy. One of the things that we always tell customers is when you go through this process, uh, the cost management service will connect over API and bring in those billing files, which we showed that contain a lot of data. So yeah, so we've seen examples that up to 24 hours for all that data to start showing up in the portal. So as you see here, once it starts bringing in that billing information, you'll start to see these nice reports. So let's go ahead and show you real quick how this looks. So now when you go to the Azure portal, click on cost management, it's going to log you into your cost management portal. You'll get to see cost over time to see how is your spend trending over time. Detailed analysis over cost by service. So this is a question that we always get is how much am I spending for VMs? How much am I spending for storage and networking? All that information will be available to you here. You'll get recommendations on savings right here. And again, this you can drill into any one of these reports. So let me click on one, for example. It'll go ahead and open up another report. And this will give you all the tools, all the filters to really slice and dice the information however you want to see. So you see here, you can select a date range. So you can see, let's say yesterday, the last 30 days from the beginning of the year, you get to see that information. You can add filters right here, view the data by group, whether you just want to see by provider, by service, by entity. So all these different grouping options, you get to do that. And additional filters as well, right? And by the way, you can click on any one of these and get more information.
David, one of the questions I often get from my customers is I want to see a report of my daily consumption just to stay on top of any anomalies that happen. How would a customer go about doing that report?
Yeah, great question, Eric. And this actually that's available and within all of these reports. So these reports you can customize and generate. And then right here, you notice in the top right-hand corner, there's an action option. So within any one of these reports, you can schedule the report. So you select that. You'll get this pop-up window, and you can choose the option to send via email. So you create a recipient, go ahead and enter that information. You want to have that report scheduled daily, weekly, monthly. You choose that option. You can actually even select thresholds. So if you define a budget and you wanted to track your spend versus that budget, and if it exceeds a threshold, you can go ahead and send that. So it's a very common request, and know that you have that availability here within the actions option. The other thing that folks don't may be interested in knowing is that you can also define a budget. So right here, you can click on budget. You can define a budget for your institution or your what we call cost entity. The cost entity could be a department. It's usually defined at the subscription level. And you define that budget right here, month over month, and you can track that spend in Azure versus your budget and get those reports. Another question that we typically get from customers is, okay, how about using tags? One of the things that they tell me is that's recommended is tag resources in Azure. Maybe a tag a resource by cost center or department.
And if you don't know what tags are, by the way,
go ahead.
They're coming soon. I was going to say, if someone listening doesn't understand what tags are, they're going to be in an upcoming video about resource tags.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have a video series on tagging, on creating policies that you can enforce those tags. So that's in the upcoming series. And with those tags, it's a way of making sure that each resource is identified to a particular cost center, for example, or department, or even workload type. So it could be production, it could be dev test, it could be test. So right here within cost management, you have what we call cost allocation 360. Again, we can't spend much time here, but overall, what this provides you is to define a model right here. So you can define a model, and in the model, you can pick for all your accounts for specific subscriptions, and you can pick those tags that are available in your Azure. resources. So right here, it's going to, within a couple of seconds here, you'll get to see those tags. You build out that model. Here's those tags available here. You can even define rule sets for resources that are not tagged. So it could be maybe storage accounts, could be networking equipment, anything that's untagged. You can define rules, even maybe networking resources like an express route circuit or a VPN. You can define rules of anything that's untagged or a particular resource, and how you want to split the cost amongst different, let's say, reports or units, right? So you can define those in the model. Once you generate that model, you can go back over here under cost allocation analysis, cost analysis. And this is what you would use to create those showback reports or chargeback reports for different units. So you can go into the cost analysis and then choose that model. So here's an example of the different models that are defined in the cost allocation 360. And this one happens to group based on the cost center we talked about. So you can build out these reports showing the spend based on that cost center. This happens to be this number value here. And this is the month of September, and this is the month of October. And you can use this for chargeback or showback. And again, like we mentioned earlier, you can schedule these reports and send them to the responsible folks. Now, one last thing we wanted to show here in cost management is not only does it give you insights into your spend, but then we also give you cost management will connect to your Azure resources and bring in your utilization, and then provide optimization options. So we talked about Azure Advisor, how it provided recommendations for right sizing VMs. That same information is available here under Optimizer, and in fact other optimizations as well. So here's the example for cost-effective sizing recommendations. You can drill into that report. They'll give you the details of particular VM sizes that could be right-sized and save costs right there by just switching the VM size. So here's an example of one standard D5 VM size that's spending $15,000 a year, and because it did an analysis that it was under the CPU thresholds that you defined or the memory thresholds that you defined, you can resize that VM to a D4 and save potentially $7,500. So just be aware, we have those optimizer options for cost-effective size, identify lowest CPU VMs that have the lowest memory utilization. We also find inefficiencies. So for example, you want to find list of disks that are unattached to VMs. So this is a common scenario that we run across, is you have VMs that you've deleted, but now they have unattached disks. Well, you'll be paying for those unattached disks, right? Because it's taking up storage. So this report will list you those unattached disks, and you can make decisions whether you want to clean them up or not. And the same thing for reserve instance comparison. So you can go here and simulate reserve instance pricing. When we will have that break-even point by selecting the VM size, the region, the instance type, and then in a second you'll see this here. You'll get to see that when is that break-even point. So you notice here, if you pay up front for a VM versus just pay as you go, you can make that analysis to say, okay, if this is let's say a domain controller that I'm going to be running the entire year, if I make that reservation, I know that my break-even point is at 9 months, and I'm going to realize savings from that point on. So great set of tools here for monitoring your spend, for optimizing what you have in Azure, and making sure that you're utilizing your resources in a great manner here. All right, so let's finish this up. So in this series, what are the next steps? The IT team and the research department now have a good understanding of costs using the Azure pricing calculator, and cost management using all the different tools from the EA portal, the Azure Advisor, cost management. But the key point to remember is that the team we'll continue to have to do this on a regular basis. Services evolve, more resources are added, so you have to do these regular assessments to look at reserve instances, right size underutilized VMs. Again, if there are VMs that maybe only need to run during working hours, you can deallocate these VMs in the off hours and realize some additional savings. And again, taking a look at hybrid benefit. Right now, there's hybrid benefit for Windows Server, SQL Server. So as these services evolve, you can take advantage and save on cost. So what is the next steps? So the team needs to grant, now that we've deployed projects, they've looked at costs, they have a clear budget, they're monitoring their spend. Next steps is, as you deploy resources, we want to grant cloud admins access to these subscription and also other team members to be able to manage these specific resources. So stay tuned for the next video in this series.